So I would like to see American diplomacy fully engaged in trying to contend with this challenge. You cited a number of other places where we have, I share your concerns about the elections in Uganda, concerns in Cameroon recently, particularly violence directed at the Anglophone population. So there are a whole series of places where we have challenges where I think the United States can help make a difference, and that starts with being engaged. Anglophone population. So there are a whole series of places where we have challenges where I think the United States can help make a difference, and that starts with being engaged. Anglophone population. So there are a whole series of places where we have challenges where I think the United States can help make a difference.
Good evening, good morning. It's 10:05 here in the great state of Texas. This is Comrade Funton Daniel. I will be speaking live here from the great state of Texas here in the United States on the question of Ambazonian War of Independence. And thank you. And I'm so glad to have all of you that are tuned in. I want to thank our people in Ground Zero. I want to thank fellow comrades here in the United States and those in South America, Europe, Asia, and I want to really appreciate all of you for the effort that all of us have been working hard for the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon. Remember that Southern Cameroon was never a conquer or a colonial territory of La Republique du Cameroun. The people of citizens of Southern Cameroon was one of those who were deprived of their freedom, the freedom to exist as a sovereign nation, despite the fact that they meet all the criteria to become a sovereign nation. However, that criteria were deprived by the UK government against the people of Southern Cameroon. So today the place has become a war-torn environment within the last 4 or 5 years, and it's still an ongoing, despite the fact that many nations have spoken and the current US administrations, that is the US Secretary of State, Mr. Anthony Blinken, on the question of Southern Cameroon. The solutions to these problems is very simple. If they take a simple mathematical equations, that problem can be solved less than 24 hours. Why is it that they so prolonged the problems rather than look at the remote cause of the problems? Leaders have the solutions. They have the mathematical formulas to find out the equations that will arrive to the answer. And yet, they don't want to take that mathematical formula to find out the equations. Instead, they're going around beating the forest, and humans are being killed. In the medical professions, the method of approach when a patient arrives in the hospital, if that formula can be used, it could save life. Why is it that only the healthcare professionals can use the mathematical formulas to solve a problems or emergency crisis? Look at the protocol in which to apply when a certain patient has been arrived in the hospital. Why is it that other government agencies or government branch cannot take the similar formulas? The people of Southern Cameroon shouldn't have been fighting war. They should have recognized their territory per United Nations resolutions, because United Nations is the same body that created other nations that emerge. Why is it that the people of Southern Cameroon must live under the umbrella of a foreign nation, La Republique du Cameroun? So more and details about this broadcast. Stay tuned and do not go away. This is Comrade Funton Daniel speaking here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States. Stay tuned.
So I would like to see American diplomacy fully engaged in trying to contend with this challenge. You cited a number of other places where we have, I share your concerns about the elections in Uganda, concerns in Cameroon recently, particularly violence directed at the Anglophone population. So there are a whole series of places where we have challenges where I think the United States can help make a difference, and that starts with being engaged.
That's true. Being engaged, that's the right thing. Well,
You know it's high level. On high level, that's all. You know it's high level.
And then that is password line.
I never really know it's not so.
They were feeling down. Forget.
I never really know it's not so.
Let them forget. I can't see them now they carry them again.
of course, you all see the video that have just passed. That is the military, those are weaponry, those are military tanker that are now being deployed in Southern Cameroon territory. Those are military weapons. If I make a good prediction, those weaponry were probably military weapons that were gotten, that La Republique bought from Central African, from the United Nations Agency in Central African Republic, and painted them overnight, and now they're being deployed into Southern Cameroon territory. Those are military weapons. Those are tanker La Republique bought from Central African Republic, and overnight and painted them, and now being deployed in Southern Cameroon territory. Of course, these problems is because we intended to please France. That is clear. The fact is we intended to please France because we don't care about the number of citizens that are being killed, but we care if we support France. France is the primary target here in this crisis. The people of Southern Cameroon merit the United Nations Resolution 1514, which called for decolonizations. It did not call for partial decolonizations. Before I proceed that, I want to make clear distinction. There is a clear distinction between the people of Southern Cameroon and the Biafra. There is a great distinction between the people of Southern Cameroon and Biafra. Because many people talk about territorial integrity without specifically outlining how they arrive at the territorial integrity. Territorial integrity. Nigeria can claim territorial integrity over the Biafra. And here is why. Nigeria can claim territorial integrity over the Biafra. Of course, United Nations did recognize that when there is a minimum sufficient knowledge that people are being deprived of their right, they have the right to become a sovereign nation and follow the normal protocol. In this case, the Biafra will meet those criteria that there is a minimum evidence of persecution from the Nigerian authority, and no solution has been done. So therefore, the Biafra has the right to follow those protocols to become a nation. In this regard, the Southern Cameroons Ambazonia does not fall with those categories. Nigeria was a former colony of Great Britain that were under the control of the Allied forces. And Southern Cameroon was part of those nations, those territories that were under the control of the Allied forces, which is Great Britain. La Republique du Cameroon was part of the French under the Allied forces. The United Nations was formed in 1945. The purpose of the United Nations was to defeat the Germans and his own alliances. And after it was defeated, the former United Nations. The purpose was to maintain peace and security throughout the world. And that peace and security have been maintained. However, the United Nations agree upon that those territories be given their rightful independence. And that came about when Resolution 1514 XV called for decolonization. It did not call for partial decolonization. So the people of Southern Cameroon meet those criteria. So if you are saying a territorial integrity, you must clarify which territorial integrity are you referring to. First, when La République du Cameroun, under the French administrative authority, France, filed for the document pertaining to La République du Cameroun become a sovereign nation in response to the United Nations Resolution 1540 on decolonization. Therefore, Southern Cameroon territory wasn't part of La République du Cameroun. So if you are emphasized of a territorial integrity, you must clarify what are you referring to territorial integrity. It is always obvious that let us be honest in our truth that we speak. Veracity, speaking truth, veracity. Are we honest to ourselves? I am not opposed whatever United States can choose to do. United States can choose. They have the power, they have the strength, they have every possibility to do what it takes. But however, we must understand that the truth is bitter. And the truth, we must stand for the truth. That honesty in our endeavor is a vital that we must show. United States can choose to bomb the entire Southern Cameroon completely into submission. Of course, nobody can temper or deprive United States from carrying on such a drastic. But if we are honest about ourselves, then it is true that the United States must respect what document they pretend to, of what they refer to as a territorial integrity. The people of Southern Cameroon met those criteria. So Southern Cameroon was not part of La République du Cameroun to become when La République filed for the United Nations document to become a sovereign nation. La République was an independent, was a nation that managed by La République du Cameroun, managed by France. So the fact that the fraud that was initiated by the British government should apologize to the people of Southern Cameroon, why they believe that the people of Southern Cameroon shouldn't got their independence, they must live under the umbrella of La République du Cameroun. There is no clear evidence. There is no clear evidence that British have the belief that the people of Southern Cameroon ought to be governed by a foreign nation. In fact, when the Southern Cameroon document were being presented at the United Nations, La République wasn't. In fact, La République, France collided with French nations to vote against the independence of Southern Cameroon because of the mineral deposit in Southern Cameroon. That France has a plan, a long-term plan, to eventually have grip of the mineral deposit in Southern Cameroon. That was the priority of France, to make sure that the Southern Cameroon independence never got through its process. In fact, United States voted in 1961 to recognize the state of Southern Cameroon. The United Nations and the U.S. representative recognized and warned. The U.S. representative warned about the Southern Cameroon. Let me see if I can still get the message about the U.S. Let me see. Just hold on. Stay tuned. Hopefully I can get it right now. This is the message. This is the message. Clement This is the U.S. Clement J. Zablocki, U.S. former chairperson of the Human and Foreign Community, speaking at 1961. This is the United States, Clement J. Zablocki. He was a former chairman of the House of Foreign Affairs Committee, speaking at the 897 of the United Nations General Assembly meeting on the 6th of August 1959. Let me read the message. The United States congratulate the people of Southern Cameroon. The United States congratulate the people of Southern Cameroon for their accession to autodetermination as a constituent and will of the population who will run affairs democratically. On the ideal unification, the result of the horrible choice imposed on the population of the trustee territory would be a catastrophic for their political future. That is the United States chairperson for the Foreign Committee in 1959. That the choice imposed upon the people of Southern Cameroon will be a catastrophic. And this is here we are now. This is exactly, we are in that catastrophic situation. Mr. Secretary, our people deserve better. Our people deserve better. We are not here to please France. We are here to please our own honesty. We are not here to please France. We are here to please our own honesty and integrity. The people of Southern Cameroon deserve their right to govern themselves and not impose upon them a foreign nation, La Republique du Cameroun. Let's be honest to ourselves. Let's be honest to our God. Let's be honest to our reality. Let's be honest, Mr. Secretary. It is not fact. You have the right, you have the power, you have the strength, you have all the weapons. Even myself speaking right here can also be bombed to submission. But remember that the truth, let's go for the truth, that the people of Southern Cameroon deserve their sovereign nation and to be governed by themselves and not to be imposed upon them by La Republique du Cameroun as the architects of governing over the people of Southern Cameroon. We are, the people of Southern Cameroon is an Anglo-Saxon education. We are not Francophones. We cannot live together with the Francophones. Respect our territorial integrity. Recognize the people of Southern Cameroon. You shall be respected. You can choose to bomb the whole place. You can choose to bomb I myself physically here. But be honest to yourself that the people of Southern Cameroon deserve their sovereignty that was deprived of them in the 60s. This is the U.S. chairperson of the Foreign Committee in response to what the British government did on behalf of the people of Southern Cameroon. Let me reread again. Let me paraphrase it again. The United States congratulate the people of Southern Cameroon for their accession to auto-determination as a constituent will of the population who have won to run its affairs democratically. On the ideal unification, the result of a horrible choice imposed on the population of the trust territory would be catastrophic for the population in the future. That was the U.S. chairperson of Foreign Committee in 1959. Dear Mr. Secretary, you have imposed visa restriction. Has it changed any significantly? Of course, you will agree with me that the La Republique continue deploy. That is the military weapon that they just deploy. Those are tanks La Republique bought from United Nations. Of course, the COVID-19 money, maybe United States donate part of the money. The money was disappeared within La Republique du Cameroun. That is the government you want to manage the affairs of the people of Southern Cameroon. We believe in a transparent economic prosperity where everyone has the right to be to question the government. That is a system that we prefer. That is the government we want, that the people have the choice to elect their representative, not a direct dictator from La Republique du Cameroun in capital Yaoundé to tell the people of Southern Cameroon how they should be governed. The citizens of Southern Cameroon are being surrounded by La Republique appointed officials. How much can the people cry for help? Visa restrictions did not lead anything. They still carry on. This is the latest weaponry tanker that are being shipped into Southern Cameroon territory. Fellow Minister Secretary, let's do good for the greatest number. And the people of Southern Cameroon want those good to be done unto them. We do not need La Republique du Cameroon to dictate on us how we should be governed. Let's stand for the truth. It began from Obama administration and it was shifted to Donald Trump's administration. Are you going to stop the ball or allow it to be pushed to a different administration? You can do something. You can do it. You can do better. Let's do it. Let's do it, Mr. Secretary. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it right. La Republique has no control over the citizens of Southern Cameroon. Of course, some people claim, because of the falsification of history, rather than speaking the truth, that the people of Southern Cameroon are separatists. How did they become a separatist? Let's clarify what is the word separatist. Separatist, when a nation is splitting. When a nation is splitting, first it was a fraud that was imposed, as you read, from the U.S. Foreign Secretary, the U.S. Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. It was a fraud that was imposed upon the people of Southern Cameroon, claiming that La Republique du Cameroon, when Paul Biya in 1984 signed a decree, abolished the entire, even the partial, whatever the so-called, the Federation, the United Republic, to what they call Republic. So the people of Southern Cameroon was wiped out. Their opinion were never sought. They were never sought, the people of Southern Cameroon, despite the fact that in Southern Cameroon, the former Prime Minister of Southern Cameroon, Jongu Foncha, Tene Muna, in OAAC 1, they both stood and said no to this relationship. It didn't occur to Biya administration to think about that this is rubbish that I am doing. If the former Prime Minister who brought us into what they so-called a union decided to stand up for the UAAC 1, say no to La Republique du Cameroon, then it is my turn to think about it. But it didn't occur to them. They continue with that marginalizations. Dear Mr. Secretary, the people of Southern Cameroon have a more democratic institution than La Republique du Cameroon prior to 1960. The people of Southern Cameroon has 3 elected prime ministers. First, Ndele, second, Foncha, and Joa were the 3 elected prime ministers in Southern Cameroon. And there was a peaceful transfer of power from one each of our elected executive to the next. There was never a war, fighting, or anything. But La Republique du Cameroon, under the French administrative authority, has never transferred power from one elected official to the next. Why is it that they should consider the more robotic French authoritarian regime to control the people of Southern Cameroon a more democratic institution? Of course, we are English speaking, we are not French speaking. We endure by the rule of law. La Republique doesn't. Dear Mr. Secretary, it is time to do the right thing for the common good of all the people of Southern Cameroon. We should not be white-coded the problems. We should do it as it is. We are not a territorial integrity of La Republique du Cameroon. You can kill, you can do whatever it takes, but the people of Southern Cameroon need freedom. Freedom to live, freedom to democrat, freedom to vote, freedom to deal with their businesses without imposed La Republique du Cameroon on the sovereign state of Southern Cameroon. Stay tuned, don't go away. The next picture, you will see France supply weaponry. France supply weaponry. Before I go into the weaponry France is supplying to La Republique du Cameroon, let me read the United Nations General Assembly. Under the United Nations, the League of Nations, prior to United Nations General Assembly, the League of Nations, A151 Resolution 2, December 1946. The Article 22 of the Covenant of League of Nations, under the mandate conferred to His Britannic Majesty, whereas 75 of the United Nations Charter signed in San Francisco on the 26th of June 1945. Now therefore the General Assembly of the United Nations thereby received to approve the following terms of the trustee territorial Article 1, Franco-Britain, Cameroon, Article 2, in His Majesty hereby designated as the administrative authority of the territory, responsibility and administration of which were undertaken by His Majesty the government of the United Kingdom of Great Britain of Northern Ireland. That is United Nations resolution that was signed, that Britain will protect the people of Southern Cameroon. Of course, France is complying with those resolutions, and that is why they are sending tanks and military hardware to support La Republique du Cameroon. And yet our people are suffering, that depending on its citizens, that are helping them to achieve those goals. But yet the British government is staying somewhere in a shadow atmosphere as unconcerned. France is applying its obligation to do what it takes. But unfortunately, Southern Cameroon is not a territory of La Republique du Cameroon, neither a territory of France. Let's look at under the peace. For the above mentioned purpose, with the following agreement, may be necessary administrative authority shall be fully power of legislation, administration, and jurisdiction in the territory, and shall be administered in accordance with their own laws as integral part of the territory. They shall entitle to a constitute and territory into a custom, fiscal administration union, federation with its adjacent territory under the sovereign control, establish a common law system, the territory whereby such measures are not inconsistent with the basic objectives of international trustee agreement, which means they shall respect the territory. That's the British government signing these accordance, respecting the human right, the people's right of Southern Cameroon, and to deal with. And that is why the people of Southern Cameroon has a more robust democratic institution than La Republique du Cameroon. They shall entitle to establish naval, military, and base, erect fortification station, and deploy the forces. This is the UK government to deploy forces to protect the people of Southern Cameroon. Those are machinery being shipped to Southern Cameroon by the French. They have no authority whatsoever to control the people of Southern Cameroon. I shall be coming back with the other weaponry supplied by France. It's not up to a month that those ammunition were shipped by France to La Republique du Cameroon. And yet UK government is giving handshake. It's giving handshake, telling us how we ought to be territorial integrity of La Republique du Cameroon. Let's stand and speak the truth. Let's stand for veracity. Let's be honest to ourselves. And ministerial authorities shall undertake and supply the provisions of international convention recommendations, international trustee aid, framing the relationship holding transfer of land and natural resources, and ministerial authorities shall be in considerating native and the custom. This is the rule. And this is from the UK government. They wrote to me on May 7th, in which they emphasize the territorial integrity of La Republique du Cameroun. Well, this is absolutely, they said they recognize the 1961 union. Of course, if they recognize the 1961 relationship under federal authority, when La Republique were manipulate everything, where was UK? UK was somewhere not to be found, having some dinner, languishes, sandwiches, and all that. Dear Mr. Secretary, the people of Southern Cameroon have got enough of La Republique du Cameroun, and their sovereignty is a priority that the United States must recognize that the people of Southern Cameroon have the right to their territory. They do not need an authority from a foreign nation, La Republique du Cameroun. Of course, the genocide that was going on in Rwanda, France was behind it. Today, France is going out to recognize them. How will be generous when the war is all won and victory, then United States will come in? I think it's time the United States show some leadership. Let's listen.
7,000 refugees from Cameroon registered with the UNHCR. Thousands more have been forced to flee their homes, and dozens of villages have been ethnically cleansed. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and High Commissioner for Refugees, 437,000 from the Anglophone regions have been displaced, whilst the charity Protection Approaches says that 3.3 million are in need of humanitarian assistance. Amnesty reports that 450 to 500 civilians and 185 members of the security services have been killed. UNICEF estimates that 58 schools have been destroyed, 47 political leaders are being held without charge, and a recent Amnesty report refers to, and I quote, arbitrary arrests, torture, unlawful killings and the destruction of property. The Catholic Bishops' Conference has called it, quote, inhuman, blind, monstrous violence. And of the October election, Archbishop Samuel Cleda, the president of the Bishops' Conference, says, one has the impression election results are decided before voting takes place. My lords, we can all share in these horrendous statistics, but what I want to do is this evening focus on what conclusions we can draw from the United Kingdom's dismal approach to this situation. More than ever, with Britain's potential departure from the European Union, we must seek to define our role in the world. And it would be helpful to know from the Noble Baroness the Minister whether, for instance, human rights issues were assessed before, for instance, the New Age natural gas deal was announced, what consideration has been given to targeted sanctions, and whether this crisis figures in the Foreign Secretary's recent commitment on atrocity prevention. My lords, the government mustn't suggest that this is a level playing field conflict in a civil war between equal sides. Too often in the past, in Bosnia, in Rwanda, in Darfur, the United Kingdom chose the path of moral equivalence, hinting that both sides are as bad as each other is the easy way out. In a previous generation, this was known as appeasement. Moral equivalence signals that we cannot be expected to pass judgment on which side is more to blame for the conflict. Instead, we issue the usual calls for a cessation of violence and a negotiated settlement, or we frame political conflicts as if they were natural disasters requiring aid, and we're very generous at sending aid rather than political solutions. At its worst, in Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur, we have portrayed the persecution of unarmed civilians by repressive governments as a result of ancient ethnic hatreds, thereby dehumanizing the victims and denying the legitimacy of the protesters who yearn for the rights that we take for granted. By citing ancient ethnic hatreds, we absolve ourselves of the obligation under international law to stop the killing. It's also disingenuous to defend our tepid response by claiming that the circumstances present us with a simple binary choice between wringing our hands in dismay or putting British boots on the ground. This is to ignore the potential for soft power available to the international community, be it concerted and sustained diplomatic pressure, carefully targeted sanctions, or international justice. The grievances fueling the violence in Cameroon did not erupt overnight. We had plenty of warning, but we chose not to listen to Cameroon's Anglophone minority. Anglophones represent 20% of the population, but for years there was only one Anglophone member of the 36-person cabinet in Yaoundé, just one example of their systematic marginalisation. My Lords, we shouldn't underestimate the influence we have, but it speaks volumes that we left it to the American ambassador to express his disapproval of the Cameroonian government's brutal response to peaceful protests. For decades, the Francophone government has ignored the pleas of moderate representatives of civil society, such as church leaders. Calls for a federal solution were ignored by President Biya, 36 years in power, fueling the calls for secession and thereby polarising opinion. Breaking point came when the Francophone government sought to impose French laws in the French language in Anglophone courts and sent Francophone teachers speaking French into English schools. They responded to peaceful protest with disproportionate force. The International Crisis Group reports that a government helicopter, for instance, hovered outside a church, shooting Anglophone worshippers as they emerged from Mass. Inevitably, disproportionate actions led to the current escalation. In the face of all this, my Lords, there is nothing admirable about being even-handed in the face of the suffering of the Anglophone community. The United Kingdom should support the Anglophone community's peaceful civil society leaders in seeking genuine and inclusive talks. We need a targeted strategy for atrocity prevention and, my Lords, a commitment to bring to justice those responsible for human rights violations wherever they occur.
My Lords, I too would like to thank my noble friend Lord Boateng for initiating this debate and too for his passionate introduction. I don't want to repeat his excellent background to the complex and contested decolonisation process that he referred to. But as my noble friend Lord McConnell highlighted, particularly since the federal arrangements were scrapped in '72, the English-speaking Cameroonians have complained bitterly that they are politically, economically and linguistically marginalised. And of course the current period of escalating violence and displacement goes back to when lawyers protested.
Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking the government bench of Cameroon, who is? That you rape our children. My brother's daughter has been raped in Boya. I swear to you, the government of this country, does the president of this country know that the governors and the DOs and all the administrators you have sent to West Cameroon are out there behaving exactly like an army of occupation? Our people have nowhere to go. We have made all the efforts. Our ancestors and our forefathers trusted you to go into a gentleman's agreement that two people who considered themselves brothers could go to live together. If this is what you show us after 55 years, then those who are saying that we should break Cameroon are right. They are correct. The people of West Cameroon cannot be your slaves. The people of West Cameroon are not, you did not conquer them in war. If this is what you are saying that we should live in, I say simply no, it will not work. How do you have an army that's supposed to protect children, step out there, beat them, and rape some? It is not heard of in any country. This is the 21st century, and anybody who does that and cannot be willing for his government to pay the price, we will exact it on you. Because you are making us believe that we went to the wrong place. What is there to say? I want the world to know and to have it on record that we have made efforts. I have sat with ministers and listened to them talk. The first one was the then Minister of Justice, Amadou Ali, 10 years ago. And I took my time, drove from Como to Yaoundé to tell him something is brewing out there. This thing that you people are sending gendarmes to beat people up and say all of these things, there is pain in West Cameroon. And as Minister of Justice, be very careful. What happens there? And he turned around, looked at me, and told me, Mr. Wilbur, it is your people who choose to come here. He is alive. He told me. Last week, I went to see the Minister of Higher Education, Professor Famendongo, and I told him, the problems in Cameroon, the problem we have in West Cameroon, is the problem that will bring down Cameroon. If you do not handle it well, you will not know Cameroon as it is in a few months or in a few years. When people have had pent-up anger and pain, humiliation, for over 50 years, when it bursts out, you will never be able to control it. And I told him, and simply what he asked me was, qu'est-ce que vous allez faire? Because you have your army of occupation out in West Cameroon, you believe that when the people will rise, even if you took the whole of the French army and added to yours, you will never bring them down. And we have no need for that. We don't have any need for that in the 21st century. I was one of the believers in a unified Cameroon. And I want to tell this house that what has happened to those children in Buea University and in Bamenda has convinced me that the people who say Cameroon should go in two parts are correct. And there are more and more of us out there who now believe that it is the ultimate end. I listened the other night, an offer of 1,000 jobs, an offer of 2 billion francs for lay schools, and I laughed at myself. Are my people slaves? So you now take them to be your dogs, that you can beat and wound and maim, break their bones, then throw a piece of meat for them to fight over. It has to end. If we, the people of West Cameroon, have to continue doing what we are doing, it is because we believe that the more is always the merrier. When you have more people, you have more chances of surviving in life. If the more people who are the people of East Cameroon have proven to us that our blood means nothing, then it is time for us to say it will soon be over. I want to give you a quote here in this house that I borrowed from the American liberators. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. The people of West Cameroon have a duty to resist your oppression. I call it oppression because of what I've seen in the field. Let me quote you another 2 instances. 3 weeks ago, there was an incident in Bangolan, which is a neighboring village to Jakiri, where I come from. And I don't know what it was about, and a gendarme officer was killed. And the forces of law and order, under the instructions of the SDO of Ngokitunya, move into Jakiri, a neighboring village, and take away 100 men. Just beat them up, break their bones, and then just leave them there. And I went to that place where he took these people, and I told him, Mr. SDO, you are going to release my people. He sent soldiers to me, and one of them told me, I said, I am the representative of these people because I'm a parliamentarian. And the guy, young man, turned around and asked me, Et puis quoi? On n'est pas ici à Yaoundé. And he drew a line on the ground to tell me, if you cross here, you will see the consequences. Unfortunately for him, I happen to be a descendant of the warriors, so nobody draws a line before me. And I crossed, and I told him, shoot me. I told the SDO, release my people. In 12 hours, he released them. But some are still lying in the hospital. They beat and kicked a woman, and she miscarried, a pregnant woman. And nobody can question this. That is the reason in this master plan to finish our culture and our people. You have chosen that every single administrator or every commander of the army is from East Cameroon. That is why they sit there and they can kill the people without remorse. This has to end. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat this quote. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. We, the people of West Cameroon, will resist you, and if you want to take that territory by force, you will kill to the last man before you take it. And you can start from me today. You can start from me. It has to end. Somebody has to know that this is not how you treat a people. 50 years is too long. 50 years is a very, very long time. And we come here and sit just talking about the budget. You normalize murder. You normalize rape. Mr. Speaker, I am sorry to tell you that this is part of the resistance. You will hear me to the end. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. It is my duty to defend my people. You will not stop me because of lack of time. Or if you want to, you can call your brutal gendarmes to come and kill me here. I will not. I will not. I want you to hear this, Mr. Speaker, that my people are suffering, and that the cube of sugar that was defined in this house. Are you just angry, Mr. Speaker, that the person you considered your slave, a slave has risen in the master's house and is asking a question? I have. Mr. Speaker, I'm telling you, this is part of my resistance, and you will hear me to the end. Bring the brutal soldiers who raped our daughters to take me out of here. I will say it to my end. I will say it to the end. There is nothing you can do to me. I'm wondering whether His Excellency the President of the Republic knows that the governors and the DOs are behaving exactly when they are posted to West Cameroon as colonial masters. When they abuse people and insult them and do all they have done, we have to resist, and we have to tell you our people will not be brought down because we came into this union as equal partners. Yes, sir. And I am done. And I am done. And we will resist. And there is nothing you can do to stop us, because this is part of our culture that we inherited. You people who fear every administrator and every ruler, we challenge our rulers, we take them to task, and that is why they are accountable. Thank you very much.
So I would like to see American diplomacy fully engaged in trying to contend with this challenge. You cited a number of other places where we have, I share your concerns about the elections in Uganda, concerns in Cameroon recently, particularly violence directed at the Anglophone population. So there are a whole series of places where we have challenges where I think the United States can help make a difference, and that starts with being engaged.
Thank you so much. This is Comrade Fontaine Daniel. Come to the end of this broadcast, and we'll be broadcast again next time. And I wish you all a happy and wonderful day. And God bless Ambazonia. God bless United States. God bless the leaders of these great nations. God bless Ambazonians for their continued struggle for a self-determination against the willful colonizations of the people of Southern Cameroon. Thank you and wish you a happy, wonderful day.